thought I'd just start by saying what we were planning to do with this time. So I'm going to read the 4 guidelines. 1, choose a sacred word as the symbol of your intention to consent to God's presence and action within. 2, sitting comfortably and with eyes closed, settle briefly and silently introduce the sacred word as the symbol of your consent to God's presence and action within. 3, when engaged with your thoughts, return ever so gently to the sacred word. And 4, at the end of the prayer period, remain in silence with eyes closed for a couple of minutes. For you, as far as your practice, was there any one of those guidelines that you found particularly challenging, or anything else that you would like to just check in at this time? Before we do our sit, I want to just clear up any issues that maybe need clearing up. And that's my cat.
So there is something to know, and that is that on the 4th Tuesday of every month at 10 o'clock in the morning, there is an open sit. Anyone is invited. And it's a really nice group that we're getting. And you can come and go. You don't have to sign up every single time. There'll be, all you have to do is...
Well, I will say it's been going. It was interesting. One night I felt like I didn't have the perfect time, it was like, what was it anyway? And then I just did it anyway. And it was kind of great because I could just give up on this idea of perfectionism. Like, my room had to be tidy in order to engage in this practice. So in that way, it's been really liberating. What I'm finding is that I've been losing track of what word I've been using. So I kind of feel like maybe I want to commit to a word for more than one day. That's all I've got.
And I think that's a good idea, if you've got a word that you like pretty well, you might want to just say, I'm going to do this for a week, use this one for a week before I even consider changing to something else. I've heard other presenters say 3 months, pick a word and use it for 3 months before you make a decision about it. I think you can be a little flexible about that if something's really not working for you. But if it just seems okay and it's not stimulating too much thinking, you might want to just stick with it and see where it leads you. Good comment, yeah.
I think I brought up at the end of last class that I'd had kind of an extreme experience with the sit that we did in the introduction. So I needed to go really kind of carefully and flexibly with this. And so I really did have it was a little frightening actually. So I needed to go pretty carefully with it this week.
Thank you for being willing to share that. I think this is a very unusual experience. People often have some unloading of the unconscious, as they call it, especially in the beginning, like the first year of doing centering prayer. But that usually is limited to just twitches and, I don't know, minor symptoms, really minor symptoms. Although it may result... tears, often, I've heard that one. Tears will just flow for no apparent reason. I don't know why I was crying, but I just found myself tears. Maybe especially people who don't cry easily.
I was used to doing a practice for the last 5 years with a meditation center, and we did it for 45 minutes. 40 minutes, actually. There was some chanting first. We did chanting, and then we did a meditation for 40 minutes. And, it's hard for me to break this up. It's easier for me to just do it all at once. And yet I found that I needed to, this is a whole new type of meditation, and to just jump in and do it for 40 minutes wasn't possible for me. And yet I didn't like breaking it up in morning and day, or morning and evening.
So I had a 1 hour mindfulness practice before I got introduced to centering prayer. And this is different,
Yeah.
is all I can say. So to be a newcomer, that's hard for some of us. And some of us are very intense. That's me. And I just ultimately did what was prescribed. And so little by little, I add a minute on here and there.
Okay.
But the 2 sits for me are the effects last X amount of hours. And to do that second sit before dinner for me, and most people will not do it at night. It tends to maybe hype you up. You got to know yourself. And I suggest being a newcomer and doing it as prescribed, and then you branch off as you need, but you don't know what you're looking at yet because you're new.
Would you be willing to just briefly touch again on guidelines for choosing your word?
Sure. Well, The Cloud of Unknowing, which is the source book for centering prayer, recommended 1 or 2 syllables. You don't have to be totally rigid about that, but that's what the recommendation is, 1 or 2 syllables. So it could be a single word or 2 words. And that it be something, I see the advantage of 2 syllables because you can time it with your breathing. If you do it with the breath, you breathe in 1 syllable and out the other. And then sometimes the sacred word will just disappear and maybe you'll be left with just the breath. So it can be any word because there's not anything inherently sacred about the sacred word. I know there are traditions in which it's extremely important that it have a certain sound, certain syllables, and that's not the way this is taught.
Okay.
Any word will do.
All right. Well, I chose the word release and wondered if that was acceptable, but it sounds like it is. It works well with my breath, and I get a good visual to start with as far as releasing. So releasing any barriers, any roadblocks, to God's presence. So release is an okay word?
Yeah. For a while, my word was simply "oh," a single syllable "oh," but it felt like it was the beginning of open. Over the many years I've been doing this, I've had several different words. They're not set in stone. I think it might be time to go to our centering prayer. So in starting, we'll have 3 bells. I'll say just a brief verse from scripture, and then we'll have our 20 minutes. And at the end of that time, I'll say a version of the Lord's Prayer. So here we go. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. be. Loving Creator God, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And let us not fall into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, now and forever. Amen. When you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes. Linda, are you ready to unmute yourself?
Unmuted.
Yeah. And I'm going to mute and turn it over to you.
Okay.
Because you've heard the theme relationship over and over again, and I like to suggest to you that the challenge is show me how you pray and you show me how much intimacy you want with God. Now, you know more about relationship than I do. I've studied it. I've been a marriage counselor. Knowing nothing, I was excellent, at doing that job because I listened a lot to learn. But the point was, as the more I listened, it had different levels, as you heard. And for any relationship really to grow, there needed to be a time to talk and listen, a time perhaps to change one's mind, making appropriate time to express affection, and having time with your honey without your honey-do list. That blasted list gets in the way of almost every relationship. We have to do things together rather than to be together. And you know as well as I do that in time, if there isn't that quiet time with each other of just being, next thing you know, there isn't time for affection. Next thing you know, you start to make decisions on your own without consulting. Next thing you know, you're hardly talking to each other, or you may be talking, but you're not listening. Does that make sense? That's why I think one of the most important points in all of this is celebrating what you've been hearing, that prayer is a relationship. It is a relationship. And for most people, this blows their minds because they always looked upon prayer as a ritual or as words. And so if we look upon prayer as a relationship, then let's explore this a little bit with little different types of prayer, if you would. Now, this is my own way of approaching this, but I think in a certain sense it bears some value. If all I do is pray my prayers, then in a certain sense, all I'm doing is talking. Talking at. Does that make sense? If all I do is say my prayers, go through all my prayers and at the end of the time finish and figure I've done what I've had to do. It'd be like a relationship that you might have with your beloved. And as long as they heard what I've had to say, that's the important thing. It's not interesting. I'm not interested in hearing what the other person's saying back to me. Now, I'm pushing the envelope a little bit here, And if you look at it in a certain sense, if all I do is pray my prayers, nothing wrong with that, please, because there's a lot of people who don't even make time to do that. If all I do is pray my prayers, then I think there's a subtle message we send into the relationship. And the subtle message is this: I want to stay in touch, but don't get too close. I want to stay in touch, don't get too close. I have it worked out fine. You know, I'm saying good morning and good night and thank you for my food, but please, 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 I'm 74 years old. I've arrived at perfection. Don't ask me now to change anything. Now, that may not be true, but in a sense, I think if you use that as a paradigm, if you just say your prayers, that's where the level of the relationship, a talking at. If one not only prays one's prayers or reads the scriptures and begins to ponder the power of the words, I mean, just think of the Our Father, you know, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those that trespass against us. Boy, if we live that, reconciliation would be very much the theme of the whole world. So the point is that if I pray my prayers and think about what I'm saying, just like in your own relationship, if you really ponder what your partner has said to you, then there's a chance that you begin to change your mind. You begin to change your point of view. And in the spiritual sense, and the changing of the view is putting on the mind of Christ. And the more I read of St. Paul, the more I hear him saying, put on the mind of Christ. And I would finish that, you know, by saying, stop killing yourself with the way you're thinking, for goodness sakes. And we'll talk about thoughts in a little while. And if I not only pray my prayers, and in the praying ponder what I'm saying, or the ritual that I'm participating in and so on, but then respond from my heart in my own words, I mean, how would it be if you were in relationship with your beloved and every time you wanted to express some love to them, however that would be, you go to your file cabinet and bring out one of your favorite poems and say, oh, my beloved, how wonderful you are. I yearn for you day and night, night and day. If the beloved had half a brain, they would say, put the blasted page down, talk to me from your heart. I think God is bored. Oh, God, here comes another prayer. Oh, there's the St. Francis prayer again. Oh, God, how many times do I have to hear that? Oh, Lord, here's the one to Mother Matilda. Okay, whatever it might be. But the point is, isn't it true? There comes to a point you got to say, I love you. I love you. I need you. Forgive me for playing games with you. I say you haven't done anything in my life, but I've never listened to what you've had to say in any manner, shape, or form. Praying from one's heart. God bless the charismatic movement. Charismatic movement taught us not only to say our prayers and think about it, because in the old days we say our prayers, think about it, and then make a resolution, and then think we're done. Charismatic movement brought back what was there, as Gail mentioned, you know, this whole dimension of relationship was so much part of our tradition to pray from one's heart. I hope you take some time once in a while to go to your room, close the door, pull down the shades and the windows, and let it rip. Yay, God, I love you, I love you, I love you. And then come out looking like a Christian again. It has, now you might say, I'm an introvert. I don't do things like that. Well, do it this way. All right? But do it, for goodness sakes. It's part of the relationship. And then, if after doing all of that, you can just rest in the arms of the beloved and allow your feet to be bathed, that wonderful passage in the Last Supper scene that no one pays attention to. Unless I bathe your feet, you cannot be my disciple. And you know, we always blame Peter for his not being really on the ball all the time. He at least had the sense to say, what? Not only my feet, Lord, my hands and my head. My hands that I hope would be used in a much better way in servicing you, and giving service to others, and my head that I might enter into that inner room and let those thoughts go and be more present to your presence that's within me. And I like to say that if you not only pray your prayers, but think about what you're praying, your mind might begin to change, your attitude, your point of view. And if you can change just a little bit, day in and day out, all of a sudden you'll find yourself in another place because you just changed the way you looked at things. I love to say to people, finish the sentence. Finish the sentence. One of my favorite examples is the whole example of mother always loved you best. How that could eat away at somebody, eat away at your relationship, that maybe Thanksgiving wasn't as good as it could have been because that one was there and the thought was there. Finish the sentence. Finish the sentence. Mother always loved you best, but she never had good taste. Get over it. Get over it. The important point is the fact to actually finish the sentence that gives you the freedom that you need. And then, having expressed your great love from your heart, to simply rest in the presence of one's God. Lingering, hanging out. One of the best examples in my life is my little niece Bonnie, who's now in her late 20s. But I would go to my sister's house, and she had 4 children. I would go to my sister's house, and I come in the door and I would say, Uncle Carl is here, Uncle Carl is here. I'm an introvert, you can tell that. Uncle Carl is here. The kids all come and they hug me and kiss me. Coming from an Italian family, there was always expressions of love. And then they would leave and little Bonnie would stay. And we would go to our Florida room and sit in that room. And she would sit on my lap. And she would tell me everything her mother told her not to tell me. And then she fell asleep, her little head resting on my chest. And I'll be honest with you, I'll never forget that, because I felt closeness to her like I never felt with the other kids. Although I loved them, we're talking about love and intimacy here. But that was a precious moment of her surrendering to Uncle Carl and just falling asleep. And I could, boom, 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 boom. And that little stinker, when she would wake up, she would pick up right where she left off. I could never figure that out. But moments, genuine moments of stillness do not come easy. And that's why we're talking about a discipline along with a relationship. Today we need to not only make the time, we need to carve out the time. It's so precious and so important to do. And when we talk about carving out time, many times people will say, well, that's awfully hard to do. And I always say the best time to do it is as you begin your day. You have your choice between gentle birth or cesarean section. Think of it. How can you function if your day begins with you being ripped out of the womb of your bed, thrown into the activity of the day, and you probably all of a sudden realize that you're walking maybe 3 or 4 hours after the day began, and that's the day you lose your keys, you forget things and everything. What does it take to begin the day with gentle birth, like the psalmists say, I awake to prevent the dawn, so that the dawn might rise inside of me before it even rises outside, so that I might have this stillness and experience the rest of the story. And in that rest of the story, we enter into those marvelous levels of silence. Exterior silence, interior silence, the beauty of the stillness that's in each one of us, that blossoms out into service and then simplifies our life. That all of a sudden we begin to see things with new eyes and hear things with new ears. Why? Because we finally decided, I want this relationship that's already there to grow so bad that I'm willing to make the time to allow it to happen, because I believe the beloved is calling me to this, and I hear it in my silent moments of my life so loud and clear that sometimes it's so awesome I don't really want to go back to it because I'm afraid of what God's going to ask of me, as if you're having such a great time now.
And there you have it. Prayer as a relationship. It's a different way of looking at it than I ever was taught. What did you think about that little video?
I love the image of Jesus washing your feet. And I saw a video where Father Carl said, when you have that monkey brain going, just sit back and let Jesus wash your feet.
Oh.
And I just think that's so beautiful.
It's almost like a divine operation, you know, like a divine, well, he calls it divine therapy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's almost, I had this sort of vision of being operated on, sort of in the unconscious being operated on, you know. And when you have an operation and you have to go into the hospital, let's say you're having a heart transplant or something, or breaking a leg or whatever it may be, you're under the anesthesia, and then you just have to surrender to the doctors, essentially, and the wisdom that they know what they're doing. So I don't want to get too technical about it, but I just wondered if anyone had any ideas about this. In various different schools of meditation, they often talk about your sense of awareness being in different parts. You know, sometimes it'll be sort of in the head space, in the back of the head.
Yeah.
And then in another place, it'll be out in front of you, about 5 feet in front of you. And then other times it'll go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the heart space. And I just kind of wondered if anybody has any thoughts about that. Are we to, since this is a relationship, does Father Keating anywhere suggest that maybe this awareness, we should focus on it being in a certain place, behind the head, in the heart, where it should be?
I had that exact same question because of where I came from. I wanted to know, where do you place your awareness? And I remember asking Benneth about it, and she was kind of like, what? But what I ended up doing with it is letting it go.
Oh, okay.
You know, for me, it was a way to control the experience and own it.
Yeah, okay.
So it's like, for me, it was just kind of turn that over too. It's like, I'm here, God, you do it. Not Linda doesn't have to do it properly. Doesn't, you know, I don't have to be intense. I don't have to, oh my gosh, so many things that I would do. I complicate all of this. You know, I know I'm going to say the following three prayers before, and then this one special prayer after, and then I'm going to ring the bell 4 times. And you know, it's like, I have to keep bringing myself back to simplicity and let God do the heavy lifting.
Okay. But if it is a relationship and you're just sitting, somehow you have to be aware of some beingness or presence or something. Otherwise, it's not a relationship. So is it outside of you? Or, I mean, like, I don't know.
I want to jump in. I want to jump in here. I'm dying to jump in here because I've had all these same questions, and I was trained in other forms of meditation before I came to centering prayer. So, yeah, I get it. What you're asking and what you're wondering about now. So the place I've come to, without going into all the details, is that the awareness, the more diffuse it is, the better. What is not helpful, I won't say wrong, it's just not helpful, is to focus on anything. So if you're focusing, on a energy center, even your heart, it's like anything that brings your awareness to a focal point, let it go. Just let it go. Let the awareness be very vague and diffuse and all around you and within you. So how can you love God and have a relationship with a being if you don't? Well, God's everywhere, and God is within, as well as out there in all of you, in everything that is created. God is present. So to just allow, it's like letting your eyes go out of focus, and you can kind of like suddenly, if you're not looking at anything, you can see your peripheral vision opens up, and you can sense the whole room. That's what it reminds me of, and that's just a poor metaphor, but that's how it seems to me.
So you're just sort of sitting there watching the paint dry on the walls, kind of, or not even that.
Not even that. No, not even that. Just
Right.
You know how it feels like that moment before you fall asleep, or you've let everything go, and it's just all wrapped around you. It's no one place. I guess that's the point. It's not anywhere and not somewhere else, because it's everywhere.
And Linda, I would say this, and I would say this. Listen, if you feel it in a certain place or don't feel it in any place or feel it everywhere, I would just kind of detach from that. I would just let that go too, because you're focusing on something at that point. You're focusing on location. And you don't want to get into this situation where you start, judging yourself in this. This is a total, sitting presently, intentionally, without judgment type of thing. You don't want to quantify or qualify this thing. So I think just gently go back to your sacred word and just let it go with you.
I don't know. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but were you able to at least get one sit in? Anybody do 2 sits a day since Saturday? Can you let us know what the challenges were? How is it carving 2 sit sessions per day? How are you doing with that? What's it like for you?
It's very hard. I don't want to stop. I sit in the morning with the group, which is great. And I show up to be with everybody, it's that added incentive. Mm-hmm. My day is just going along, and I don't want to stop. It's like the thoughts that arise during the meditation, unless I surrender, the thoughts will just keep going, and same with my action during the day. I'll just keep doing whatever the next thing is. And it's interesting to see how I say no to it. It'll arise in my mind, and then I'll just do one more thing, and then it's gone. So it's no easy thing. It's hard.
Anybody have the opposite? Janice?
I've been centering for about 3 years. And when I started, I centered twice a day and found the afternoon centering to be very, very difficult. I don't know why, but it was. And so I stopped doing that afternoon centering for quite a while. And I was only centering in the morning. And finally, I realized that I needed to do it twice a day. And I started again. And it's not always easy, of course, it's hard, but it's really helpful to do the 2 centerings a day. I think it it's a practice, it's a process, and it sort of speeds up the practice and the process, making it ultimately easier, I think.
Generally, the feedback is most people have more trouble for the afternoon sit. And, you know, the little trick I play on myself is to say, nothing's more important than my relationship with God. So I make God a priority. And I tend to do it right before I start making dinner. Because if I attach it to that habit, then, you know, I don't skip dinner. But if I do it before I make dinner, oh, it's already done.
Yeah, for me, it was very difficult to do the morning because I was so used to evening before dinner. And so to find a schedule in the morning, like, you know, I was so used to getting up, I had a routine, getting ready for work, and now I've got to carve out 20 minutes to, you know, it just was very difficult to recreate that and to be persistent in it, you know.
Yeah, you have to let everybody know. You have to let yourself know. It takes planning. And, you know, some people have to eat first thing in the morning. Some people have kids that they're getting ready to, you know, other people taking care of their situations also. There was one woman who took, instead of 2 10-minute breaks at work, she would take 1 20-minute break at work in the morning, and she would do her first sit in her car.
And do they ever recommend for instead of 1 20-minute in the morning, 10 minutes maybe before work, and then at work during a lunch break another 10 minutes, so that would be 20, or no, is that not?
I guess you could, but I don't know. I hesitate to do that because I know me. I would do 1 10-minute and then somehow forget to do
Yeah,
the other one. And then in the 10 minutes, oh, I was interrupted. Does this even count? You know.
yeah.
Sometimes it takes 19 minutes of the 20
Yes.
for me to, you know, begin to
Yeah.
settle down and get still.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are times in a sit when the bell rings and I go, oh my God, I just simmered down and I apologize. I'm sorry, you know. But the 20 minutes, you know, most disciplines start you with 20 minutes. Why? Because it takes about that long for us to settle down, you know, that monkey mind.
Linda, it's 8:28 and we promised these folks we'd be done at 8:30.
Look at us. Look at us.
So I do hope you will all return next week. We will continue this story, the rest of the story. Shall I end this with a psalm? Sure. This is an excerpt from one of Nan Merrill's psalms. This is Psalm 106. Giver of life, bestower of all gifts, may we become bearers of joy, we who are invited to share in the cosmic dance. May we walk with faith all the days of our life, confident in your living presence, even in times of trouble, and with assurance for what it and all that is, with assurance for what is and all that is to be. May we have faith in the unfolding of our lives and radical trust in the universe. Awaken us to the oneness of all things, to the beauty and truth of unity. May we become aware of the interdependence of all living things and come to know you in everything and all things in you. For as we attune to your presence within us, we know not separation, and joy becomes our dwelling place. Amen.
Amen. You're so beautiful, all of you looking out.
See you all next week.